Here we go. Roll video.
I think anybody creating something new must have an adventure.
It's not cinema, it's something else.
My advice to a young filmmaker is to make a movie every week.
The whole bag of movies can be learned in about a day and a half.
But suspense is essentially an emotional process.
You gotta make films. You gotta make it and get it seen.
Cinema for me is a world of when I dream.
Welcome to Behind the Slate. I am your host, Aaron Strand. Today, I am speaking to Evan McNary. Evan is a filmmaker originally from Atlanta. After getting his MFA from Florida State, he eventually relocated to Los Angeles, where he worked on the business side of production at ICM and Anonymous Content. Now, he has since transitioned over to writing and directing and now serves as the managing director for the production company Craft Services. And in 2021, he released his feature film debut titled Ragged Heart, which is a touching story about a father coping with grief after the death of his daughter, which was set and filmed in Athens, Georgia. And as I prepare to shoot my feature debut in Athens, I figured there could be no better man to talk to. Ladies and gentlemen, Evan McNary.
Hey, Aaron, you've done your homework.
Hey, you know, I really try to pride myself on my bios, you know, and it's just out of respect to make sure you know who you're talking to.
What a pro.
Hey, you know, I try. Hey, well, speaking of which, and I'm just kind of like going to jump right in here. So I read from my research that you and your sister, co-writer Deborah McNary, you guys had a very unique childhood here in Georgia. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you know, what your experience was growing up here in Georgia?
Yeah, we had the more of the intense religious experience. It's tricky to know where to start with that, but our dad was a preacher, and we migrated. We went between a few different churches. One of them, the one our dad was a preacher at, was known for its exorcisms. So I got a firsthand look at, you know, that sort of heavy emotional state, seeing adults in very heavy emotional states. Then we moved to a Pentecostal church, and we saw all kinds of interesting things there. Again, watching people go through the whole gamut of emotional experiences and intimacies and things like that. So, you know, you take what you can from your childhood and whatever helps, you know, make your lens unique. And I'm sure we've gleaned some things from those experiences, you know.
So what was, like, in this environment, what was your sort of earliest exposure to film or storytelling?
Most of the storytelling we got was through, we weren't allowed to consume, you know, normal media. So music, movies, TV, all that stuff. We weren't allowed to watch or listen to. So preaching is an obvious one, you know, watching preachers, my dad and other preachers tell their stories. And then there were religious programs geared towards kids. So stories about missionaries, radio shows about animals and how God created these animals and things. But you glean a lot of things, and it's all the same sorts of storytelling structures that you would use any other time. So that's, you know, it wasn't completely foreign to then watch, you know, secular stuff or listen to secular stuff.
Do you remember what your first sort of secular film exposure was?
Sneaking stuff at friends' houses. So whatever friend had cable, I would go there and stay up until morning watching stuff, just gorging myself on whatever I could get my hands on. So, you know, action movies, stuff like that.
At what point did the seeds start to percolate that, you know, filmmaking or storytelling was something that you wanted to do with your life?
It was really late. So I started making goofy little shorts in high school, but I didn't think anything more of it other than it was a way to hang out with friends. And then in college, I was pre-law, and I took one of those intro to film classes, and they just showed me all the cool films that made me aware that it was an art form and that you could do cool things with it other than, chase sequences and fight sequences. And so I caught the bug then and just kind of dove headfirst into it.
That's amazing. So by the time that you decided to get your MFA, what kind of filmmaker did you hope to be? Like, what did you enter into that program expecting and hoping for?
I was totally geeking out on the complete, nerdy stuff. So, the '70s kinds of films and the indie minded sorts of films, and obviously everyone loves Paul Thomas Anderson, but that is if you're going to find an American equivalent, something like that, or really. I wanted to make films like the ones I liked from the '70s, like Five Easy Pieces and those sorts of raw, films that felt a little messy and still in the process of becoming, rather than really refined, overly baked sort of film.
Yeah, totally. And that certainly like read through in Ragged Heart. And I love like on your website that you cited, I mean, three of my absolute favorite movies in Nashville,
Hmm.
Five Easy Pieces, and Tender Mercies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just three incredible
Oh, those
films.
are some of your favorites too, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, Five Easy Pieces probably would be my top
Yeah.
out of those. Just personally, even though I recognize Nashville is just like an absolute masterpiece, and then Tender Mercies, the first time I saw it, I couldn't believe it. And I was recently at or I guess this was a couple of years ago. I was at the Oxford Film Festival in Oxford, Mississippi.
Hmm.
There was a woman speaking on a panel who had been close friends and collaborators with Horton Foote.
Hmm.
And she actually was a PA on Tender Mercies. And she like it was like she like briefly mentioned it. Or no, she had just made a documentary about her time going through Horton Foote's archives. And so like I dorked out. I grabbed her afterwards and I was like, I love Tender Mercies like so much. I can't believe you were on that set. Like, tell me everything. It was just, yeah. I mean, all those movies are some of the closest ones to my heart for
Oh,
sure.
that's cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So you do you feel like getting your MFA? And this is me kind of asking just personally because I've thought about getting an MFA and maybe it's something still in the future that I might pursue. Do you feel like getting an MFA like got you closer to that goal of becoming that type of filmmaker?
I will preface what I'm about to say by saying that I've met some of my dearest friends at film school, and I'm really fortunate to know those people I met there. But I think that film school is a scam. It's criminal. I think it's predatory, and they know all film schools know it, and they're still doing it because it's a cash cow for them. Especially in this era where anyone can make a film. It's just criminal that these film programs are all charging all this money. And kids are coming out with $100,000, $200,000 in debt. When they could have they could have made 20 short films, with that, and made them on their terms rather than dealing with you got to also have to deal with the politics. And so a lot of these schools, as you probably know, you can pay all this money and not even get to make that many films. It's just crazy to me. I made a website at one point, trying to convince people not to go to film. It's not called No Film School, but it was that was taken, and they're doing good work.
Really?
Yeah. But I think I really feel like I would have met some of these people that are so important to me. I would have met them out here just making stuff and bouncing off other people. I think you make stuff and find the places that are making things you really respect and intern with them, even if it's for free. Um, I don't care if it's for free, if it's a place you really respect and want to work with or work in that similar vein. Those are the two things everyone should do. And I think that, film schools should come with that kind of disclaimer right up front. Like, that's really all that matters is making stuff, and possibly, if you really want to, interning places. You mentioned, anonymous content. That was a place that they just repped everyone I respect, or not everyone, but so many people I respected. And I worked there, and I worked at another production company, both of them for free, and, you know, um, did odd jobs to pay the bills while I was doing that, just because it was so, and, I ended up making so many friends through there as well.
It's I would like kind of laugh at myself because I went to drama school for my undergrad and left feeling the same way that you're feeling you're expressing about film school. So the fact that it's even
Mm.
like a passing notion in my mind is like somewhat ridiculous. Like I have only to look at my own past and history and arts in the higher education uh,
you know, you know
for
better.
that kind of perspective. So yeah, I do know better, which is why I'm 33 and I haven't done it. So,
Yep.
so anyway, so you mentioned going to anonymous content. Was that was your first move out of film school to go directly to Los Angeles and then start just like, taking these opportunities, or what was your first move coming out of there?
Yeah, that was it. Is to come out and,
Okay.
you want to, if you can write at all, you want to write and have some, because I, even working at Anonymous, I was working for all these directors that were fantastic on, say, the commercial side, and some were on the feature side, but I was watching all these phenomenal directors of commercials and music videos try to get into features, and they were having as much they were having a really difficult time because they didn't have the material. So they were constantly grinding, constantly trying to meet the right person or the right agent or the right writer who had the material that could then direct. And that was going on for years. And they were like, these are people at the top of their game trying. So if you can write, or if you can find someone early on who can write, like, latch onto them, generate however much you can, because that is the premium, and things are going to change. I'm sure everyone's worried about AI and all that stuff, but still, story sensibility is going to be at a premium regardless, and the kernel of the story is always going to have some sort of weight, I think. So if you have some of that, that's going to get you in the door more than anything else.
So, at what point in your journey did you know that it was time to make the leap into your own independent feature? What sort of led you to that decision? Because it's always a risk. It's always a leap of faith. What got you there?
You can talk yourself out of it because it's kind of crazy to do it ever. And I just waited too long. I was being sensible for too long, waiting for trying to get enough money, trying to get the right script and all that stuff. And I should have made my first feature 2 years after coming here. I should have made it well over 10 years ago, and I would have muscled it out. I would have learned so much. I would have made certain friends in production, made acting alliances, and sort of made inroads in, what do you call them, film festivals and things like that. That would have been so much more valuable because all that stuff snowballs. Just one little connection here or a friendship there. Those things all snowball, and they snowball the most if you're making things. So I would say you have to just make them. I mean, you can be smart about it. Obviously, a lot of people are smart and calculating, and they make the perfect first film, but very few people are going to make a perfect first film. Most of the great directors didn't make a perfect first film. So it seems like recently, over the last 15 years, some of the best directors have made a really good first film. But I mean, you look back at the legends, their first films weren't great, you know?
No.
So rather than waiting for the right thing, freaking make it however you can, and then build on that, because there's never the perfect time.
Yeah.
And I really wish I would have made my first one like 12 years ago. And then this one was out of desperation because I couldn't find the money for so long, and then I was just like, I got to make something. This is crazy. I live in Los Angeles for the most part right now, and I'm surrounded by people way smarter than me that are just waiting for that perfect moment to make their film, or waiting for the perfect actor to come on, and they haven't made any features. So you got to be a little bit. You just got to trick yourself into being excited about it and preparing as much as you can and just doing it, you know?
We are completely philosophically aligned here, and I'm picking up everything you're putting down. I just me personally, I kind of like made the decision that I wanted to be a filmmaker about 10 years ago, and yeah, figured it would be like 2-3 years before I could like build up to a feature. I didn't know I didn't know anything. I was had to be completely self-taught, and yeah, I mean, it's 10 years later. Now, I did have a false start where I actually like shot a feature in 2016 that I wasn't able to finish in the editing room. And that, and like, that was, and part of me was, it was out of fear and like living under that sort of like oppressive myth of like the first feature, and like, you
Yeah.
only get one shot and it's gotta be amazing. If you're gonna be anything, even though you're absolutely right that like so many fantastic directors are like, we shouldn't live under this myth of the first film heralding your future greatness, and that most of the great directors were just workaday artists who built up to their greatest work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, it's oh man, it's like wanting to play the perfect game of basketball and refusing to just go out there and play sometime. You know what I mean?
Yes, dude.
You
Yes.
can watch all the game film, but your body, it's such a physical, like the way you metabolize what's happening on a set and generate things on a set. You can't do it besides you can't get good at it besides doing it for the most part. You got some geniuses who can, but in the right, they have to be a genius and also in the right circumstance where they have some sort of team around them. Otherwise, it's really tough.
Absolutely. The other thing that you said that I love and is like one of the guiding principles of this project that I'm currently in pre-production on is that I have experienced it personally. But the thing I think that breaks my heart the most is I've watched so many friends have these great ideas die on the vine because because they're living under the mindset of, if only I had the money, the DP, the what, if only I had the perfect thing, then I could make my movie.
Yeah.
And it's just it, and you just watch great art fucking wither
Yeah.
under from a disease of more. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And like, dude, like, you just need to go out and make it. And so
yeah.
that's been one of my guiding principles of like, we're gonna make this movie with what we have. We're not gonna succumb to the disease of more, and we are going to make the best choices with the means at our disposal.
Yeah, and you'll make something good and you're going to be so much better the next time.
Yeah, for sure. So for you, once you reach this critical stage of like, okay, I've got to fucking do something, where did this story that became Ragged Heart come from?
It started one way, and I always approached it knowing that it was going to be a mix of, experienced actors and first time actors. I just love it. I love that the energy that can come from that, and hopefully the authenticity that can come from that. It's just it's my thing. So I knew that was going to happen, and I first wrote the story myself, and it was quite a bit different than how it turned out. I wrote it to take place in Atlanta. I wrote it to be a brother-sister story in a music scene in Atlanta. And while I was driving across country, I realized it should be in Athens because Athens had like such an interesting character to offer. As you know, it hasn't been overshot. It has it's a real rustic quality to it and a real character that I love. So I was like, okay, we're going to shoot in Athens instead. My sister is a town, or was at the time, it was, a local and very loved in Athens. She was like the Ferris Bueller of Athens. And so I was like, okay, well, if she's up for it, we should team up and make it there. And so then I embedded in Athens, and Deborah, my sister, would suggest a certain character who might work, or a certain person who might work as a character in the film. I would go interview them, and then if it felt right, I would shoot a mini documentary of this real person to get them, one, used to the camera, and two, to for me to get used to them and to understand how they spoke and their personality. And then we would go back and rewrite the script based on that character, on that person, and how they naturally talked. And so then we retooled the whole script that way. And we would give the script to the experienced actors. And then the people who are first timers, we wouldn't give them the script. So the experienced actors, they would have an intention, and or they would actually know what they were supposed to say, but would have to adjust. The real people would have an intention, but I wouldn't tell them what to say because I didn't want them to get in their head. And then we would put everyone together and watch it play out. And for the most part, it really worked in a cool way.
That's awesome. That's such a really, really smart pairing. Now, did you approach the locals first, or did you go through the casting and get someone like Josh Michael on board first? Like, how did you?
Yeah, we had those linchpins. We did have those linchpins. We had Josh Michael, and we went through a casting, put it on the casting sites. And the guy who plays the main character, the dad, Eddie Craddock, he submitted through a casting site.
Oh, cool.
And I had written it for a different character, younger character. And actually, before I cast Eddie, it was still going to be a brother-sister story. And then he sent in his audition, and I just felt like he had something. And I knew if we had a lot of money and we're looking for him, we still might not be able to find him. So it just felt like that was a thing that we were being given, and we retooled it so it would be a father-daughter story.
Wow.
Just because of, he had so much, he had something, and we did rehearsals with him and things, and I was totally sold on him. He had such a natural understanding of character and a real grounded vibe.
Yeah.
In my mind, and which is I responded to, and Deborah responded to. So we stuck with that, and that's the thing. As you know, when you don't have a lot of money, is you look for what you're being given and try to make the most out of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Eddie's performance was absolutely incredible in the film.
Yeah, he's cool, right?
Dude, I mean, like, yeah, he's got this incredible look, he's got this incredible like character to his face and everything, but it's the performance that like flickers underneath, and like and his natural calmness that invites the camera like into his particularly like into those subtle emotions in his face and in his eyes. Just really, really, I mean, you can't teach that.
No, you can't.
Just pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you were feeling that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you mentioned how did you go about funding for this film, and then how did you go about crewing up for the project?
Funding, I just saved up. I do, commercial work and stuff like that, and I just saved up. I near the tail end, we did a Kickstarter for finishing funds, and that was also in part just to push us out, to get the word out and to reconnect with people who might be interested in it. And that's almost probably more important in some ways, as the money. In a Kickstarter situation, it forces you to get out into the real world. It forces you to sum up and be able to package your film, which then becomes useful when you're sending it out to film festivals and things like that. So I'm certainly grateful to everyone who did contribute. It was every dollar was helpful. So. And what was the other part of it? How did I crew?
Yeah, how'd you crew up?
Okay, so I'll break down the super indie approach here, which is, as most indie filmmakers do at this point, I know all the different positions pretty well. I can be a one-man band, so I know cameras, I know lighting, I know sound, I know gaffing and gripping and all that. So I know in a pinch I can do all that stuff, but you don't want to, because it takes away your attention from performance and that sort of thing. So I'm not happy that I did a lot of that other stuff, but sometimes I had to. But starting from, okay, say the filmmaker, the director knows some of that. Obviously, the two people, who you're going to hire first, or who I'm going to hire first, if I'm going to spend any money on anyone, is the DP and then the sound guy, right? So the one man sound mixer who can also boom, has a good attitude, can roll with things, really cares, but is okay when you just have to run and you can't get, ambient or whatever. He's like, he gets that whole situation. So
Yeah.
those are crucial. And then you build from, at least for me, you build from there. Then, okay, so you got, in my mind, you got sound mixer, you got DP. Then I go to gaffer is the next person. Then I go to first AC. If you have focus, if you're planning to pull focus, so that's what, 5 people right there. And then I go to grip, and then I go to like a producer / AD type, possibly, and then that's the crew. Sometimes it's less than that. And my DP is a guy I've known from where he was on my very first short film way back in Atlanta, and we've been friends, and he's worked on a lot of my commercials and stuff since then. And luckily he lives in Roswell, Georgia.
Oh, cool.
Josh Fritz. So, and he's just a hoss. Has the artistic thing, but he also can just get things done when you're in a grind and, you don't have many people. He can do it all and stay level-headed and still try to bring like a cinematic feel when it's possible. So that's sort of a godsend.
Yeah.
And right before we crewed up, I had a little commercial. We were shooting in Roswell, actually. So I crewed people that I thought would work on the film. So, and I over crewed. So I hired more people than I needed for that shoot, just to see who I really vibed with for the, and I could cherry pick for the feature. And I found our sound mixer there, Scott Brown, who is just, I can't recommend enough. He's an Atlanta guy. And then, we picked some other people from that crew.
Nice. I'm curious, kind of going back a little bit in the story here, but did you have what were you feeling, relocating from Los Angeles and like settling down in Athens, Georgia, for at least for this artistic process? Were you feeling excitement that you were going to be doing this thing, or was there a sense of like, oh man, is this the right decision? What was going through your head there?
I think a good thing about a destination type of indie project is it makes you commit, So you're out of there. You've jumped out of the airplane at that point, and you're just going to what are you going to do? You're going to make it work. And it gives you a certain momentum momentum is the most important thing, it's just like forward movement, awareness, however, all those different kinds of momentum, they're so important. And the momentum of you creating, like we were saying before, you have to be crazy to start. But once you start, if it's a destination situation, you're not turning back at that point. And I think that's super helpful, especially in an indie situation where you don't have this whole machine propelling you forward.
Now, did you have a specific timetable that you were like, you knew you were going to be out by, or like you had to get the film made by, or was it somewhat amorphous?
It was, no, I didn't. I wanted to get it done in a certain, within a few months, but we were scheduling per availability. So you don't have money, but if you're flexible, you can possibly get certain actors to do certain things. Like Josh Michael was easily the most busy actor. He's constantly flying around doing stuff, and so knowing knowing that we could wait on him for a certain day was super helpful. And it of course it took way longer than I thought just waiting on people. We probably had maybe 13 or 14 full days of production if you squashed it together.
Okay.
But it was like we had a few days and then we were waiting on one guy. Oh no, we were waiting to cast one person who didn't come through. and then I had to go back to LA. So I went back to LA. We waited for that person to become available. I drove cross country just for that day to shoot him, to actually pick him up from. He thought I didn't want to freak him out. He thought I was in Atlanta. He was like, I can be there. It was actually Patterson Hood. He thought, who's a very busy musician, and I knew, and he really encapsulates a certain feel for Athens. I knew it would be worth waiting for. So
Yeah.
he thought I was just waiting there for him. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be there. I'll pick you up from the airport. I drove cross country straight to the airport, picked him up from the airport. He was like, oh, that's cool. You came down from Athens to pick me up. And yeah, I didn't want to freak him out and tell him. And we shot him out that day, you know?
Wow.
So
Damn. That's crazy, dude. That's totally nuts.
yeah.
I love that. How did you Patterson Hood, of course, like if anyone doesn't know, like lead singer of the Drive By Truckers. How did you go about approaching not just him, but then also like all these local people to Athens, like Vernon Thornsberry, Vic Peel, Chris Hubbard, Mariah Parker? How did you what was your initial approach? Did you sort of have like a spiel, or was it like individualized to each one of them? What was
Yeah.
your guiding principle, I guess, is really like in approaching these people?
That's all my sister Deborah.
Mm.
She's tight with, she's since moved, but she's good buds with all those people,
Oh, cool.
sees them all the time. And the cool thing about Athens is you can get locations and actors for either free or not all the money in the world. So they're either, for the most part, and things are changing, I think, with so much work coming through Atlanta and filtering up there. But in general, it had a barter kind of feel to it because we had Deborah, as our representative. So none of that could have been made for the budget we had without her. If you're doing a destination sort of situation, you just need one person who everyone already trusts over there.
And we talked a little bit about these sort of three films that you threw out of these films from the 1970s: Nashville, Tender Mercies, Five Easy Pieces. I think it's a little trite to say that like, oh, these movies could never be made today, as if they were like easy to make in the 70s, you know what I mean? But at the same time, so much modern film writing is geared toward this like, high concept storytelling, these very regimented beat structures and like the quote unquote like rules of screencraft. How did you resist the sort of the temptation that when I'm writing, I sometimes I can feel the magnetic pull of like conventional screenwriting like pulling me. How did you stay true to these principles that you sort of like brought you to film school in the first place?
I'm not going to die on any certain hill as far as that goes because it hasn't I'm still getting there, as far as I'm still built. It is important to me for films to feel organic and to feel discovered and not sterile. So that's just going to happen. I think I'm just going to keep trying until something feels more discovered, and a lot of times that's in the moment. If something's not feeling right, to give yourself that time, and going back to what the world gives you, every day I would look for, at least I would try to find one thing we were being given that we weren't expecting. Basically, there were two things top of mind. One was, if there's one shot we have to get or one moment we have to get, what is that moment? Because things are going to go crazy. We can't control that much. So what is that one thing? And then once we got that one thing and we got the scenes we really needed, we'd give ourselves a moment to think about what we were being given that we were glossing over, because you're just like grinding and grinding towards a thing, and you're probably missing something that is going to feel more substantial or more interesting than that thing you're just like grinding towards. So you just give yourself a few minutes where you can to regroup and think about that. So that's a thought I have. As far as in the script phase, a lot of that you can just feel if you do a table read, you know? You do a table read so much, you realize how much things don't need to be in there or just feel a little too pat, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and it really radiates. Like one of the cool things is that like it's this is a story about a man coping with grief from the loss of his daughter, and yet like for much of the middle of the film, he's sort of in stasis about what to do with that. And that stasis like gives him all this time to sort of like have these conversations that, about life or like have these little moments. And of course there's a certain the psychological burden that like he's dealing with as well. But it's not like oh, like turn to act two, like he must have a plan to like solve his problem. Like he just kind of sits in it, and it's like it's really refreshing and was like really surprising about the film.
I'm glad you feel that. Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a risk, because a lot of people don't like that, or if they're looking for a reason to not like something, which is we're so inundated with media, obviously. So if you're into analyzing films, you're looking for a reason not to like something. You're like, okay, this is something I can latch onto. Is why to not? Okay, I don't want to. You know what I mean? So you run the risk of doing it, and certainly there have been those sorts of feelings of like, where is this thing going? I didn't know where it was going and stuff like that. That's you got to kind of just take those knocks. Um, but at the same time, if you're if you're paying for it, at least you can try to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's one of the rare things about um, independent film. And I'll just say this in general because this is like one of the things that like I just enjoyed the most about the film was that there was this added texture that it was so clear that like you made the film your way. You made an independent film. And like so much of being a filmmaker is like having to adhere to clients or other producers or whatever. And like that true independent spirit of being able to do things your own way, and you also at the same time I watch a lot of first features from filmmakers, and it's so clear that they're trying to impress somebody or they're trying to make it look just like something else that's been made, and like you feel that in the texture of the film. And the thing about Ragged Heart was that like you felt like as the viewer, I felt the risks you were taking. I felt like that sense of discovery like coming across, and it was a very rare texture that like not a lot of feature films had. And I think like I think it's incredibly incredibly admirable and like a real accomplishment that you made.
But I appreciate that, man. That means a lot, and I'm glad that that's coming through. You never know sometimes.
Absolutely. What did you have a plan for distribution?
No, see, that's the thing is, okay, so I do believe, especially for a first film, you have to just make it and get it, and like you're going to learn so much, and you're going to absorb so much, um, and all the books will tell you got to have a distribution idea in place. Um, Distribution's changing so quickly, with the internet, that it's hard to know exactly where your opportunity is going to be in 2 or 3 years, when you get the thing done and finalized. I will say this: having a well-known actor would does change things. Knowing friends who do have like people who are like not A-list but approaching, if you are A-list, it changes things. It changes things for getting into festivals and distribution, because that's really all they look at. Distribution in particular, unless it's one out of a million. There's like one film a year that's a super indie film that comes out that has no names, But so that's something I learned the hard way. But I also knew it too, it. But I was like, you know what? I just got to make it, because, like I was saying, I have all these friends who are really good filmmakers, and they've been waiting for years for the right actor to land. Like they have agents, these scripts are with these great actors, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting for the right. Oh, I almost have this guy. Oh, and I'll talk to him a year later. Like, well, that guy didn't work out, but we got this other guy. And you're just watching this thing. So it's one way or the other. You just have to know, you have to go in clear headed about it. You're going to like, okay, especially if it's your first film, just get it made, I think. Knowing that it does make a huge difference not having, because that's all they see. It's just like name or no name. That's all. It's just like I've watched it over and over again. Even like any festival that claims to be all about artistic stuff, if it has a name, it's in, So, or that's at least the first qualifier. Then it has to be good or whatever. That was the diatribe. I forgot what the question was, though.
It was just about, did you have a distribution plan?
Oh yeah, right. Okay. So, all right. So, no, I was just like, well, I'll get it out there, and okay. So there's these tiers, I'm sure you know. There's like sales agents, and then they pitch it to distributors, and then distributors pitch it to portal like the HBO or like. Actually, that's not exactly right. It depends. Like it's all mixed up. But sales agent can be a thing you can use, not necessarily. You don't necessarily need it.
Yeah.
But we had a sales agent was interested in pitching it to the distributors, so I took them on, and they got some offers from distributors that a lot of the indie people get. But it was a situation where they I don't know anyone who's gotten a good distribution deal, quite honestly. Even bigger films, it's pretty gnarly out there. So what they're going to all do, I'm sure you've talked about this before, all the distributors are going to have a certain amount of costs that they're going to put against whatever you make. And so most filmmakers don't ever see any money, because the distributor's job is to hide any profits in whatever costs they say they're putting against it. And so, we had those deals, and I was looking through them, and not only would they own it for 7 years or longer in these deals, but they had a flat, 30 grand or whatever against it for marketing fees and stuff. And these were the deals my friends were getting, who had made films for 10 times what I made my film for. So I just went there's a name for organizations like Film Hub, they're completely digital, and they take your film and they put it up through all the portals like Amazon, like
Right.
You know what I'm
Totally.
talking about.
Yes.
There's like 3 of them, and so I own the film. I'm not making big money off of it for sure, but it's like, okay, it's on Amazon. It's on like all these places where people can see it and search for it. And because it's my first one, I'm just like, I'm sort of betting on myself in that if I make a second one or a third one and those pick up steam, then I own the first one that may now have value. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So it's not a home run by any means. Well, that's just what I did.
Yeah. I mean, the distribution system, if you can even call it that, it's such chaos, and it's so skewed against it's so skewed against indies.
Obviously, genre stuff, I believe they are making money on Film Hub, because there's such a loyal fan base there,
Sure.
horror specifically.
I guess, my question, you've already sort of alluded to this, but just to ask the question sort of flat out, as someone who is planning to shoot, his first feature in Athens, Georgia, I mean, you've already alluded to some of your advice, like in the process, as far as like looking for the moments that are being given to you, sort of working with having those boots on the ground to like take advantage of those local favors. Is there anything else that like comes to mind that you learned along your journey of making this movie?
But to reiterate, you need at least one ride or die on set with you. Like who is the person who's going to gut it out? So and ideally it's your DP. And then, if you can get a producer who's behind the scenes and a sound guy. But that's number one, I think. Who are you going to count on is so huge. And getting the story as tight as you can and doing those table reads, just so when things change, your body's absorbed it on such a basic level that you can pivot. You understand what the story needs to be or what it can be. Those are the big things, man. And then be limber for what opportunities are there that do work. And well, here's a big thing, and it's such a film school professor thing to say, so I hate to say it, but tone is really important. Like having in your mind exactly how this world should feel, because you don't want to. And this goes for whole scenes, it goes for performances, it goes for setting, it goes for set dressing. Exactly how does this world feel? You don't want to waste days shooting scenes that you realize later don't fit in this world. Do you know what I'm saying? Or storylines that feel good, like they're going to feel good on the page, but really be tough on yourself and on your script, as far as like, okay, is this a heist movie? What kind of heist movie? Is this a drama? What should this comedy feel like? And comedy is a lot of, like, the comedy in a story is definitely a place where things can get out of hand, and you end up just like wasting time shooting something that's never going to fit in your world or in your story.
That's great. Were there, in reflecting, were there any mistakes you felt that you made in this process, or things that you wished you could have done differently if you had a second chance?
I would have. Okay, here's a good one. In shot design, this is pretty obvious, but when you're in the chaos of trying to make a film, I forgot this anyway. Think about the visual flow from scene to scene and what the whole thing should feel like visually or frame wise. So I really care about performance, but I also wanted to really capture this world, right? And in the mix of like shooting a scene here, grabbing a scene here, grabbing this scene here, I was focused on performance, but I wasn't thinking fully about how these scenes, once they were fit together, would flow visually. So I was getting, basically, there weren't enough wide shots in a row. So I had these like great textures and like shooting through things and the great performance, but I was like, I have 3 scenes in a row where there's no wide shot, and I love this world. What am I doing? So step back enough to it's such a dumb thing to lose track of, but it's one of many things you can lose track of so easily.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It's also funny too, because I don't know if this was a part of your original vision, but in Ragged Heart, there's like ethereal, sort of layering quality and like movement to the edit.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you felt that like there wasn't even like quite enough coverage there is pretty shocking.
Yeah, and not even like coverage of the same performance, but just the feeling of the world.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. What were the moments that brought you the most joy in making this movie?
Basically, anytime working with Eddie, because he had such a natural understanding of character and was so comfortable sinking into it. And he always brought something just a little bit off center that felt real. And he was able to draw that out of the other actors. So it was just really, and then, Josh Michael, I've been friends with him for a long time. And so it was great to work with him. And, any scenes with him and Eddie together were awesome. And then working with my sister, that was kind of a cool thing because, she's in one way or another been drafted to help me on projects since we were little. And it was cool to make a full feature with her, and I'm happy. We have that sort of that artifact of all that work together, and she was so sweet and gracious and resourceful in making it, and also my DP making a feature with my DP Josh Fritz. Those are a number of the things.
It sounds to me it's like it's the people, like the moments of like with the real people that like you get to have.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
It's so easy to get tunnel vision about the film and the art and what it might mean, and both as a piece of art and also like as part of our careers or whatever. And
Yeah.
it is one of the things that I am trying to, as I'm in pre-production, I'm like crewing up right now and trying to keep first things first, which is that like it's about investing in human capital and like people, and like how can you treat them right, and how can you treat these people with respect and like the artists that they are, even when you can't pay them like as much as they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And because those are the things that, I think, that you do walk away remembering, and that like you cherish is the relationships you get to build.
That's a good assessment, I would say.
Having gone through this experience, are you excited to make your next feature? Would you make another feature film in the same way? Would you make it different way? What are you thinking for the future?
Yeah, well, next one is going to be more like the one they say you're supposed to make, which is contained, few actors. And I knew that going into the first one, but I just couldn't line it up. I couldn't make the story work, those stories work in a way that interested me. And I spent so much time trying to write those stories and they didn't work. I did this one. But this next one, I think I found the right story. I'm working on that now, and that will be, more contained with fewer actors.
What is your overall sort of sense of indie filmmaking in 2023 and sort of where things are headed? Are you hopeful? Are you frustrated? What do you think about this crazy thing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly daunting, and I'm frustrated with distribution in film festivals. One, distribution. Two, as far as their tunnel vision in how they select things, and it just seems like there are more filmmakers than ever making things.
Yeah.
So we should just be swimming in unique storytelling, like just crazy ass, really cool, unexpected, never seen before. Because there are that many voices who can make films now, and it seems like the things that are getting pushed to the top are the same, story structure, the same visual beat, the same emotional beats that we've seen a million times. It blows my mind. And surely soon there's going to be some sort of renaissance with all of that. And the indie people who are established are also just kind of making the same stuff they've always made, in my opinion. So they're not really taking chances. They're not really doing anything that is challenging or could get them hated. They're making really retread. They're doing the same thing over and over again. So that's my 2 cents. I'm just surprised to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is something that I was kind of talking about with Noam Kroll. Do you know Noam?
I don't know. I know I love his work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, but I don't know him.
He came on the podcast as like part of this series.
He's a gangster.
Dude, he's awesome. And we were talking about this, like this kind of weird inverse relationship between, we are at a point right now technologically where you can literally like make anything happen on a screen.
Yeah.
Certainly at the like multi-million-dollar budget level, but even at an indie level, like you can do so much.
Yep.
So in this world of unlimited possibilities of what you could bring to life on the screen, the actual storytelling is at like at an all-time like low. You know what I mean? Like
it's bizarre.
The possibilities of what happens within a story or within the souls of the character, within the souls of the art, is like in a totally opposite relationship. And it's so weird.
Yeah, I think people are running scared, and again, the film fests and the distributors. And I'm not saying like my film in particular, I don't think it's not super crazy or anything, but I know there are people out there making just like at the very way back in the day, they were making films like Pi that were at least challenging, and they were like doing new things with edit or, fun things with editing and voices and angles. It's just like, where is that now?
You mean Darren Aronofsky's?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
But it's like, why isn't it all that now? Why isn't it all cool stuff? And it's, I don't know.
You just bringing up like people running scared, the fear of taking risks. I mean, it is scary, but I think that at a certain point in time, whether it was just, I think about the early 70s and when so many of these movies that I love and clearly you love too, like were made, in some sense, like the movie industry was like had its back so up against the wall, and like things were so dire and bad that it was just the industry got a case of the fuck it's, or that sense of like you got your back was so up against the wall, that's when you find out what you're really made of.
100%. Yeah.
And we live in this weird world of where there's a glut of incredible amounts of money being made at the highest level. There's a glut of the number of people engaging in the art form, like you said, more filmmakers than ever. And in this glut, there's this forever sense of scarcity of one misstep could like, leave you to the dogs of competition. And then people aren't afraid to step out of line. So I don't know what's going to happen, but
right. Well, there's at least two of us then.
Yeah. For sure. Oh man. Well, Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Where can people follow you, find out about your work?
Yeah, the website for the film is raggedheartfilm.com. And then my Instagram is Evan McCrispy.
All right. And I will put all the links to those down in the show notes. So if you're listening to this on a podcast app, please go check that out. Please go watch Ragged Heart. You can literally go rent it on Vimeo, Amazon Prime, all the stuff right now. It's a fantastic watch. You will not be disappointed. As always, you can email me, behindtheslatepod@gmail.com. That's behindtheslatepod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at behindtheslatepod. And you could follow our own feature film journey at Withdrawal Film. And thank you so much for listening. And until next time, that's a wrap.
When your disappointments come and you feel so blue, there is someone who cares for you. When you need a friend to the end, there is someone who's a friend.